Blood pools on concrete. January 10th, 2018. California State Prison, Sacramento. Exercise yard. A 48-year-old man lies dying, 23 stab wounds carved into his flesh. Prison guards stand frozen, watching. They don't move. They don't intervene. They let it happen. His name is Develin Stringfellow, co-founder of one of the most notorious white gangs in Southern California history. He survived 3 decades in the criminal underworld. He survived the streets of Long Beach. He survived the punk rock wars of the 1980s. He survived countless prison sentences. But he couldn't survive this, because this wasn't a prison fight. This wasn't gang warfare. This was an execution, ordered from the shadows, carried out in broad daylight. A message written in blood for every white inmate in California to read. The Aryan Brotherhood doesn't forgive. The Aryan Brotherhood doesn't forget. And when you become their property, there's only one way out. This is American gang war. And this is the story of how a punk rock gang from Long Beach became slaves to the most dangerous prison empire in America. How the underdog got swallowed whole. How brotherhood became bondage. How independence became a death sentence. Welcome to the takeover. Long Beach, California. 1985. The sun sets over the Pacific, painting the sky blood orange. But in the dive bars and underground venues of this coastal city, darkness is rising. Bender's Ballroom, ground zero for the hardcore punk explosion that's tearing through Southern California like wildfire. Black Flag, Descendants, Bad Religion, The Germs. Night after night, hundreds of kids pack into this venue, slamming their bodies against each other in the mosh pit, screaming lyrics that reject everything their parents built, everything mainstream America represents. But this isn't New York. This isn't the East Coast punk scene with its art school intellectuals and safety pins through cheeks. This is California punk, and California punk runs on something darker, something more dangerous. Methamphetamine. The drug flows through Fender's Ballroom like blood through veins. Kids snorting lines in bathroom stalls before the bands take the stage. PCP-laced cigarettes passing through the crowd like currency. Cocaine deals going down in the parking lot while guitars scream inside. And in the middle of this chaos, watching, learning, absorbing the violence and the energy, a group of teenage boys begins to form. They're nobody special at first. Just suburban white kids. Middle-class teenagers from good neighborhoods with nothing to rebel against except the crushing mediocrity of normal life. They wear leather jackets covered in band patches. They shave their heads or spike their hair into mohawks. They embrace the aesthetic of punk rock rebellion. They call themselves PENI, Public Enemy Number 1. The name comes from a British punk band, Rudimentary Penny, though there's no formal connection. Just kids, looking for an identity, looking for something to belong to in a world that seems designed to grind them into conformity. At first, it's about the music, the chaos, the raw energy of bodies colliding in the pit, the fuck you attitude that hardcore punk represents. These kids aren't political. They aren't ideological. They're just angry, directionless teenagers who found each other in the darkness of underground venues. Then Scott Miller changes everything. They call him Scottish. A surf punk kid from Huntington Beach with a tough reputation, but still just another face in the scene. Until the night He walks up to the leader of the LA Death Squad, pulls out a gun, and fires. One bullet, one body. One moment that transforms Scott Miller from a punk kid into a legend. Overnight, Miller becomes a god to the Huntington Beach skinheads. The kids who wear Doc Martens and suspenders, who've started incorporating white power imagery into their punk aesthetic. To them, Miller represents everything they want to be. Fearless, violent, willing to kill for respect. And that's when Public Enemy #1 stops being a punk gang and becomes something else entirely. Two men emerge as leaders in the chaos that follows. Two co-founders who will shape PENI's destiny for the next 3 decades. Develin Stringfellow. They call him Gazoo. Young, charismatic, with a wild energy that draws people to him like moths to flame. He's a talker, a storyteller, the kind of guy who can walk into a room and own it within minutes. He loves the spotlight. He loves being known. He'll talk to anyone about anything, always ready with a story or a joke or a threat, depending on what the situation requires. And Donald Mazza. They call him Popeye. Where Stringfellow is loud, Mazza is calculating. Where Stringfellow seeks attention, Mazza seeks power. He's the strategist, the businessman, the one who sees beyond the immediate rush of violence to the long-term possibilities of criminal enterprise. From the beginning, there's tension. Not open conflict, but competing visions for what PENI should become. Brody Davis pushes the ideological route, traditional white supremacist beliefs, distributing leaflets promoting their racial ideology, rejecting drugs and crime in favor of building a movement. He sees PENI as the vanguard of a race war, soldiers in a larger struggle to preserve white America from what he perceives as existential threats. But Mazza sees something different. He sees money. He sees power. He sees opportunity. As Davis's influence fades, drowned out by the siren call of quick cash and immediate gratification, the disenfranchised white kids follow Mazza down a darker path. They start using the methamphetamine they're surrounded by at punk shows. The gang structure tightens. Hierarchy emerges. Rules are established and enforced. By 1987, PENI isn't handing out political leaflets anymore. They're robbing houses. They're running illegal sex trafficking operations, exploiting runaway girls and drug-addicted women. They're building a criminal empire on the foundation of punk rock rebellion. But their specialty becomes something unusual for a street gang. Something that sets them apart from the Crips and Bloods and Mexican mafia operations that dominate Southern California's criminal landscape. Identity theft. It starts simple. Raiding mailboxes in affluent neighborhoods, digging through dumpsters behind banks and mortgage companies, stealing personal information from trash. Credit card numbers, social security numbers, driver's license information, the building blocks of financial identity. Then they get smart. Mazza realizes that the most valuable asset PENI has isn't muscle or weapons, or even methamphetamine connections. It's women, girlfriends and wives and sisters who can go places PENI members can't, who can infiltrate institutions without raising suspicion. Women can't be official PENI members. The gang is strictly male, bound by a culture of toxic masculinity and white supremacist ideology that sees women as property, as tools, as means to an end. But they're essential to the operation. PENI recruits women to get jobs at banks, at mortgage companies, at Department of Motor Vehicles offices, anywhere that has access to personal information. These women steal credit profiles from the inside, photographing documents, memorizing social security numbers, creating entire false identities that PENI members can use to open credit cards, take out loans, purchase vehicles, rent apartments. The money flows. Thousands of dollars, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. All built on stolen identities, fraudulent credit, financial crimes that most law enforcement agencies don't even understand yet, much less know how to investigate. And the violence escalates. PENI isn't content to just steal anymore. They're establishing territory. They're enforcing discipline. They're sending messages to rivals and recruits alike that this is a serious organization with serious consequences for betrayal. By 1990, PENI has abandoned Long Beach entirely. The punk scene that gave birth to them has moved on, evolved, fractured into 1,000 subgenres. The venues close or change ownership. The bands break up or sell out. The moment passes, but PENI doesn't disappear. They relocate to Orange County, to the sprawling suburban neighborhoods of Huntington Beach and Costa Mesa and Anaheim. And they start recruiting a new generation. Bored latchkey kids from white suburban neighborhoods. Middle-class teenagers with two-parent households and college funds and every advantage society can offer. But they're looking for something more. Something dangerous. Something that makes them feel alive in a world of strip malls and soccer practice and soul-crushing normality. PENI offers them brotherhood, identity, purpose, a family bound by blood and violence and shared criminal enterprise. The methamphetamine trade explodes. PENI controls supply lines running from Southern California up through the state, moving product into Sacramento, into the Central Valley, into Northern California. They're not manufacturing yet. That will come later. But they're distributors, middlemen making a fortune on America's growing addiction to crystal meth. And then members start going to prison. Drug charges, weapons violations, assault, robbery, identity theft. The crimes pile up, and one by one, PENI members get sent to California's vast prison system. Chino, Pelican Bay, San Quentin, Folsom, Corcoran, New Folsom. That's when everything changes. Because inside California's prison system, there are rules, hierarchies, power structures that have existed for decades, built on violence and racial solidarity and the brutal mathematics of survival behind bars. And at the top of the white inmate power structure sits the oldest, most violent, most organized prison gang in American history, the Aryan Brotherhood, San Quentin State Prison, 1964. The California prison system is exploding with new inmates, flooded by the state's increasingly punitive approach to crime. Racial tensions are high. Black inmates are organizing. Mexican inmates are forming alliances. And white inmates, historically the dominant force in California prisons, are losing ground. That's when a group of white prisoners makes a decision. They form an organization, a brotherhood, united by race, by violence, by a willingness to do whatever it takes to maintain white supremacy behind bars. They call themselves the Aryan Brotherhood, the brand, the AB. In the beginning, it's about protection. White inmates banding together against what they perceive as threats from other racial groups. But it quickly becomes something more, something darker. Something that will evolve over the next 6 decades into the most sophisticated prison gang in American history. The Aryan Brotherhood develops a structure, a hierarchy, At the top sits the Commission. 3 high-ranking members who make all major decisions. Below them are captains who control individual prisons or regions. Below them are soldiers who carry out orders, enforce discipline, generate revenue. The rules are simple and absolute. Blood in, blood out. You join the Aryan Brotherhood by committing murder. You leave the Aryan Brotherhood by dying. There are no exceptions. There is no retirement. Once you take the shamrock tattoo, once you're patched in, you belong to the Brotherhood. Until death. The AB doesn't recruit casually. They're selective, exclusive, taking only the most violent, most loyal, most useful inmates. At their peak, they number fewer than 100 official members in California's prison system. But they control thousands of associates, allies, and subordinate gang members. How? Through a system of proxy organizations. The Aryan Brotherhood realizes early that they can't maintain direct control over all white inmates. There are too many prisons, too many yards, too much surveillance from correctional officers and federal investigators. So they build layers, puppet gangs that operate under AB direction while maintaining the appearance of independence. The Nazi lowriders become their first major proxy organization. Formed in the 1970s, the NLR handles street-level operations, drug distribution, identity theft, murder for hire, all while funneling money and intelligence back to AB leadership. It works beautifully, until it doesn't. By the late 1990s, California prison officials are cracking down on gang activity. They implement the Security Housing Unit, the SAAU, a prison within a prison designed to isolate high-ranking gang members from the general population. 23 hours a day in an 8x10 concrete box. No human contact, no sunlight, no communication with other inmates. Just isolation, designed to break the human spirit, to neutralize the most dangerous prisoners by severing their connections to the outside world. The Aryan Brotherhood's leadership gets locked in the SHU, Yandel, Troxel, the members of the Commission, the captains who run operations in individual prisons, all of them buried in solitary confinement, cut off from the general population. It should end the AB's power. That's what prison officials think. That's what the SAU is designed to do. But the Brotherhood adapts. They need proxies, soldiers on the outside who can move product, collect debts, enforce discipline, carry out hits. The Nazi lowriders have been their primary proxy, but then California validates the NLR as an official prison gang. Same restrictions, same isolation. The middlemen get locked down with their masters. The AB needs new foot soldiers. They look around California's prison yards, searching for the next organization to absorb, to control, to transform into AB infrastructure. And they see public enemy number 1. By the early 2000s, PENI has everything the Brotherhood wants. A growing street presence across Southern California. Methamphetamine distribution networks generating steady cash. Identity theft operations that bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars. A reputation for violence that keeps rivals in check. Most importantly, they're not validated yet. PENI members can still move freely through general population. They can communicate between prisons. They can act as messengers, as enforcers, as the eyes and ears the AB desperately needs. The strategy is elegant in its simplicity. Recruit PENI leadership into the Aryan Brotherhood. Give them status, protection, the prestige of wearing the shamrock tattoo. Make them feel special, chosen, elevated above their station. In exchange, PENI becomes a farm system, a pipeline of criminal soldiers serving AB interests while maintaining the illusion of independence. To the outside world, to law enforcement, to casual observers, Public Enemy Number 1 remains a separate gang. They have their own name, their own symbols, their own identity. But inside the prison system, everyone knows the truth. PENI answers to the brand. The first domino falls in the early 2000s. Donald Popeye Maza goes to prison for attempted murder. He stabbed a fellow PENI member who'd become a drug informant. In the world of criminal gangs, snitches get stitches, or worse. Maza doesn't lay low inside. At Chino Correctional Facility, the same prison where the Aryan Brotherhood first formed its commission decades earlier, Maza assaults a sex offender. In prison culture, sex offenders occupy the lowest rung of the hierarchy. They're targets, fair game for anyone looking to build a reputation or prove their willingness to use violence. Prison officials see a pattern in Maza's behavior. Violence, zero hesitation, loyalty to the white power structure. They transfer him to Pelican Bay State Prison, to the segregated housing unit designed specifically to cut off high-ranking gang members from the outside world. Pelican Bay, California's supermax within a supermax, the most brutal, most isolating prison in the state system. It's where California sends the inmates they can't control anywhere else. This is where the Aryan Brotherhood makes their move. 2009. Maza is sitting in his cell at Pelican Bay when he gets the invitation. Not through official channels, not through paperwork or formal procedure, just a conversation. A quiet acknowledgement between men who understand what the shamrock means. Joining the Aryan Brotherhood isn't like joining a street gang. There's no ceremony, no public declaration. It happens in shadows, in whispered conversations, in the spaces between official surveillance. But the commitment is absolute. Blood in, blood out. Once you're in for life. The only way out is death. And when the AB gives you an order, you follow it. No questions, no hesitation, no second chances. Maza accepts the invitation. He becomes a full member of the Aryan Brotherhood. And with that acceptance, he transforms Public Enemy Number 1 forever. Law enforcement immediately recognizes what this means. When the co-founder of PENI becomes an Aryan Brotherhood member, PENI doesn't just have an alliance with the AB. They become property, assets, tools to be used and discarded at the Brotherhood's discretion. By 2017, the Anti-Defamation League describes Maza as PENI's most notable leader, using his Aryan Brotherhood status to bolster the gang's credibility and influence throughout the California prison system. But credibility comes with a cost. Federal prosecutors will later reveal the deal in court documents that lay bare the strategy. Several PENI members were granted entrance into the Aryan Brotherhood, specifically so the AB could spread its influence and get gang members on the streets. It's not a partnership. It's not an alliance. It's a merger. A hostile takeover dressed up as Brotherhood. PENI members become foot soldiers in the AB's empire. They run drugs for AB leadership, moving methamphetamine and heroin through distribution networks they built. They carry out hits on AB targets, killing rivals and traitors and anyone who threatens the organization. They funnel money up the chain to commissioners locked in solitary, using identity theft operations to generate revenue. And they do it all while maintaining the illusion of independence. To casual observers, public enemy number one is still a separate gang, still making their own decisions, still operating under their own flag. But inside the prison system, everyone knows the truth. Every white inmate, every correctional officer who's been around long enough to understand the dynamics, every gang investigator tracking the movement of drugs and weapons and violence through California's prisons. PENI answers to the brand. The Aryan Brotherhood has perfected a system that law enforcement struggles to dismantle. Even when AB leadership gets locked in the SHU, even when they lose direct contact with general population, the organization doesn't collapse. Because they've built layers, proxies serving proxies, street gangs feeding prison gangs, feeding the commission at the top. PENI is just one piece of a much larger machine. The Nazi low-riders, when they can still operate. Smaller Peckerwood gangs across California, groups with names like Wolfpack and Golden State Skins and American Front. All of them operating on the streets, all funneling resources and intelligence up to AB leadership. The underdog gang from Long Beach isn't independent anymore. They're infrastructure. And the Aryan Brotherhood is about to use that infrastructure to build an empire that will shake California's prison system to its foundation. Pelican Bay State Prison, Segregated Housing Unit, 2000. Ronald Dean Yandel sits in an 8x10 concrete cell, staring at walls he's memorized over 15 years of isolation. 23 hours a day in this box. 1 hour for exercise in a slightly larger concrete box. No human contact. No sunlight. No communication with the outside world. The state put him here because he's dangerous. A convicted double murderer. High-ranking member of the Aryan Brotherhood. The kind of inmate who can orchestrate violence from behind bars, who can order hits and move drugs and control prison yards through sheer force of will and carefully cultivated reputation. Solitary confinement is supposed to neutralize him. That's the theory. Lock the most dangerous inmates in isolation. Sever their connections to the outside world, and the violence stops. But the theory doesn't account for human resilience, or human cruelty, or the endless adaptability of prison gangs that have spent decades learning how to operate in the most restrictive environments imaginable. Yandel spends 15 years in the SHU. 15 years of isolation. 15 years of planning, thinking, waiting for an opportunity that seems like it will never come. Then, in 2015, everything changes. Statewide hunger strikes sweep through California's prison system. Thousands of inmates refusing meals, protesting the conditions of long-term solitary confinement. Civil rights organizations file lawsuits challenging California's use of isolation as cruel and unusual punishment. The courts rule that keeping inmates in solitary for decades violates the Eighth Amendment. Prison officials are forced to review their SHU population. They have to move people out to transfer long-term isolation inmates back into general population. They transfer Ronald Dean Yandel to New Folsom State Prison in Sacramento. For the first time this century, Yandel has a cellmate, access to other inmates, the ability to move through general population, to talk, to plan, to coordinate, and he gets something else, something that changes everything, a contraband cell phone. No one knows exactly how it gets smuggled in. Maybe a corrupt guard looking for quick cash. Maybe a visitor who hides it in a body cavity. maybe a drone drop over the prison wall. The method doesn't matter. What matters is that suddenly, for the first time in 15 years, Ronald Dean Yandel can reach anyone, anywhere in the state. He starts making calls. Federal prosecutors will later describe what happens next as one of the most sophisticated prison gang operations in California history. Because with that phone, Yandel begins coordinating an expansion campaign designed to consolidate the Aryan Brotherhood's control over every white gang in California. The wiretaps capture everything. Federal agents listening in real time as Yandel talks about building an army, creating a new Aryan Brotherhood composed entirely of hardened killers, forcing every white gang in California to bend the knee. Total consolidation, complete control, an empire. But there's a problem. 4 rival white supremacist gangs have formed a secret alliance against the Aryan Brotherhood. The United Society of Aryan Skinheads, Wolfpack, Golden State Skins, American Front. They see what's happening. They know the AB is trying to absorb every independent white gang in the state. And they're trying to resist, to maintain their independence, to avoid the fate that's already consumed public enemy number 1. Yandel needs to send a message. Not just to these 4 gangs, but to every white inmate in California. He needs a kill that everyone will see, that everyone will remember, that everyone will understand as a demonstration of absolute power. He needs a target so high profile that no one can miss the message. He picks Hugo Yogi Pinell. August 12, 2015. Pinell is 71 years old, a living legend inside California's prison system. A member of the San Quentin Six, the infamous group behind a 1971 prison escape attempt that left 6 people dead, including Black Panther leader George Jackson. Pinell has spent 43 years in solitary confinement. 4 decades in the SAU, most of it at his own request, because he knows he's a target. The Aryan Brotherhood has been trying to kill him since 1981. For decades, the isolation of the SAU has kept him alive. But the courts forced California to release long-term SAU inmates into general population. Prison officials transfer Pinell to New Folsom. 5 days later, he's walking across B Yard, moving between housing units. Just another inmate going about his day. 2 inmates approach him. Jason Beaver Weaver, Waylon Pitchford. Both of them are trying to earn their way into the Aryan Brotherhood. Both of them have been promised membership if they complete this mission. Both of them know exactly what's expected. Weaver moves first. He's carrying an inmate-made shank, a blade fashioned from metal stolen from the prison workshop, sharpened over weeks until it's razor sharp. He stabs Pinell in the back. Once, twice. The blade sliding between ribs, puncturing organs. A guard sees the attack. He deploys a smoke grenade, trying to stop the assault. The canister explodes, filling the yard with tear gas. Weaver doesn't flinch. He keeps stabbing. Pitchford pins Pinell's legs, holding the old man down while Weaver continues the attack. Another grenade goes off. More tear gas. Guards shouting, alarms blaring, the entire prison erupting into chaos. Weaver keeps stabbing. Multiple wounds. 23 times the blade enters flesh, carving through muscle and tissue and the fragile architecture of the human body. Hugo Pinell dies on the concrete. 71 years old, 43 years in solitary. Killed 5 days after being released into general population. The yard erupts into a full-scale race riot. Black inmates rush the attackers, trying to avenge Pinell. White inmates form a defensive line, protecting Weaver and Pitchford. What starts as an execution becomes a battle. 70 inmates fighting, 29 injured. Guards firing tear gas grenades into the chaos, trying to restore order. It takes 20 minutes of sustained violence before correctional officers can separate the combatants and lock down the prison. Later, federal agents play the wiretapped phone calls. Ronald Dean Yandel's voice comes through clear on the recordings. He's bragging about the hit, using racial slurs to describe PENI, explaining how Weaver and Pitchford earned their rock, the shamrock tattoo that marks full Aryan Brotherhood membership. 1 murder, 2 new members, and a message sent to every white gang in California. This is what happens when the Aryan Brotherhood wants someone dead. This is what happens when you refuse to fall in line. This is what power looks like. The empire is expanding, and public enemy number 1 is watching, because PENI co-founder Develin Stringfellow is locked up in the same prison. He sees what happened to PENI. He understands what Yandel is building. He knows the rules have changed. But Stringfellow has never been good at following rules. He's old school, from the Long Beach punk days when PENI was independent, when they made their own decisions, when they didn't answer to anyone. He's a loudmouth. He talks too much. He draws attention. And in the new order that Yandel is building, that's a death sentence. The Aryan Brotherhood is taking notes. They're watching Stringfellow, evaluating him, deciding whether he's an asset or a liability. The decision doesn't take long. Develin Stringfellow has been in and out of California's prison system since 1991. Drug charges, weapons violations, gang enhancements. The convictions pile up like bodies, each one adding years to his sentence, each one pulling him deeper into the machinery of the criminal justice system. But by 2018, he's close to the finish line, set for release in 2020 after completing a 6-year sentence for drug trafficking and weapons possession. 2 more years, 730 days. He can taste freedom. Former California gang investigator Matthew Boner will later explain what happens next in an email to the press. He was a loudmouth, and the Aryan Brotherhood does not want attention. Inside California's prison system, silence is survival. The AB operates in shadows. They communicate in code, fishing lines made from torn bed sheets to pass messages between cells. Conversations disguised as mundane small talk, hand signals and body language that convey orders without words. They handle business without drawing heat from correctional officers or federal investigators. They don't announce their plans. They don't brag about their operations. They move in darkness, striking without warning, disappearing before anyone can respond. Develin Stringfellow doesn't operate that way. He's old school, loud, opinionated, still acting like PENI is independent, like the Long Beach days never ended, like he can say what he wants without consequences. He talks about the old times, about building PENI from nothing, about the punk rock shows at Fender's Ballroom, about when they were free, when they made their own decisions, when they didn't answer to anyone. The Aryan Brotherhood doesn't tolerate that kind of talk. It reminds other inmates that there was a time before AB control. It makes people think about independence, about resistance, about the possibility of saying no. That's dangerous. In the empire Yandel is building, there's no room for nostalgia about the time before the takeover. There's a strategy to how the AB handles problems. Boner describes it. Its members lure targets into thinking they are safe, then strike as violently as possible to send a message to enemies and membership to stay in line. Stringfellow thinks he's safe. He's a founder of PENI. He helped build the organization from nothing. He's got history, respect, name recognition. Nobody touches the founders. He's wrong. January 10th, 2018. Wednesday afternoon. California State Prison, Sacramento. The same facility where Hugo Pinell died 2.5 years earlier. The same yard where Yandel demonstrated the AB's power in blood and violence. Stringfellow walks onto the exercise yard. It's a routine afternoon. Inmates lifting weights, playing basketball, walking the perimeter. Just another day in the endless monotony of prison life. 2 inmates are waiting. Jacob Cobber, 29 years old, serving life for a 2012 murder. Stephen Dunkhurst, 49 years old, initially in for robbery but now facing life after weapons and vehicle theft convictions stacked his sentence. Both of them are trying to earn their way into the Aryan Brotherhood. Both of them have been given an opportunity. Complete this mission, and you get the Shamrock. You get membership in the most powerful prison gang in America. You get protection, status, respect. All you have to do is kill Develin Stringfellow. They move fast, no hesitation, no second thoughts. Inmate-made weapons, shanks fashioned from stolen metal, sharpened in darkness, hidden until this moment. They attack Stringfellow in the open yard. Multiple stab wounds, the blade entering his body again and again. 23 times. The same number of wounds that killed Hugo Pinell. That's not coincidence. That's a signature. The AB's calling card. Guards don't intervene immediately. They stand frozen, watching. Later, they'll say they were assessing the situation, determining the level of threat, following protocol. But everyone inside knows the truth. Guards in California prisons learn quickly not to interfere with AB business, unless absolutely necessary. Getting involved means making enemies. Making enemies means putting yourself at risk. And no one wants to be on the Aryan Brotherhood's bad side. By the time correctional officers pull the attackers off, Develin Stringfellow is dead. 48 years old, 2 years away from freedom, murdered on a prison yard in broad daylight. Prison officials tell the press they don't have a motive. It's a standard line, the bureaucratic response to prison violence. We're investigating. We don't know why this happened. Random prison violence, gang-related, no further details available. But everyone inside knows. Donald Mazza is sitting in Sacramento County Jail when he hears about Stringfellow's death. He's been arrested on federal racketeering charges along with 15 other Aryan Brotherhood members and associates. The indictment is massive, 143 pages, detailing years of criminal activity, dozens of crimes, a conspiracy that spans the entire state. Mazza is locked up with the same people who ordered hits, moved drugs, built the empire. The high-ranking AB members. The captains and soldiers and enforcers who make the organization function. One day he's talking to William Sylvester, another AB member. High-ranking, respected within the organization. A man who's been with the Brotherhood for decades, who's proven his loyalty in blood. Sylvester tells Mazza something that changes everything. I had one of your friends murdered in prison years earlier. Mazza asks who. His heart is already sinking because he knows. On some level, he's always known. But he needs to hear it. Sylvester says the name, Develin Stringfellow. Mazza will later testify about that moment in federal court. The realization that the Aryan Brotherhood killed his co-founder, his brother from the Long Beach days, the guy he started PENI with, back when it was just punk kids looking for belonging, looking for something to make them feel alive in a world of suburban mediocrity. I gave the eulogy at Gazoo's funeral, Mazza tells the court, his voice breaking. The admission breaks something in him, because Mazza had been trying to play both sides. After his release from prison, he'd gotten baptized, had a racist tattoo removed from his chest, got involved in legitimate business, made friends outside the gang life. He thought he could manage it. Stay connected enough to keep the AB off his back while living 90% clean. Make just enough criminal money to satisfy the Brotherhood while building a legitimate life on the surface. But the Aryan Brotherhood doesn't have a retirement plan. They don't let you go 90% clean. You're either all in or you're dead. They wanted Mazza to commit another murder. The target, Michael Thumper Tripp, one of Mazza's closest friends, a fellow AB member, a brother in every sense that matters in the prison world. The order comes down from Ronald Dean Yandel himself, the same man orchestrating the empire building, the same man who bragged about Pinnell's murder on wiretapped calls, the same man who's trying to consolidate control over every white gang in California. Kill your friend. Prove your loyalty. Show us that you value the Brotherhood more than anything else in your life. Mazza is trapped. If he refuses, he's dead. The AB will put out a green light, a kill order, and every white inmate in California will be hunting him. He'll never be safe again. Not in prison, not on the streets, not anywhere. If he kills Tripp, he's a murderer again. He's back into life completely. No more pretending at legitimacy. No more hoping for something better. And he's killed a friend, a brother, someone who trusted him. There's no third option. The Aryan Brotherhood doesn't do compromise. They don't negotiate. They don't accept partial compliance. You're either with them completely, or you're against them. And being against them is a death sentence. So Donald Mazza makes a choice that will define the rest of his life. He calls the feds. 2022. Donald Popeye. Mazza pleads guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. He admits to planning Tripp's death, though Tripp was never actually killed. Federal agents intervened before Mazza could carry out the order. Then Mazza does something almost unheard of in the Aryan Brotherhood. Something that violates every code the organization holds sacred. He agrees to cooperate. Full debriefing with federal prosecutors. Complete disclosure of AB operations. Leadership structure. Criminal activities. Names. Retry Z. Continue dates. Locations. Everything the feds need to build their case. And he agrees to testify. In the Aryan Brotherhood, there's no greater betrayal. Snitches are the lowest form of life. They're targets for assassination, marked men who will be hunted for the rest of their lives. The blood in, blood out code doesn't have exceptions for cooperating witnesses. But Mazza has made his calculation. He's seen what happens to people who stay loyal. He gave the eulogy at Stringfellow's funeral. He knows the Brotherhood will eventually kill him anyway, whether he follows orders or not. At least this way, he has a chance. March 2024. The federal courthouse in Sacramento. Mazza takes the stand. He's changed since the Long Beach days. Older now, grayer. the weight of 3 decades in the criminal underworld etched into every line on his face. The racist tattoos are gone, removed through painful laser treatments. But the shamrock remains, hidden under his shirt, a permanent reminder of choices that can never be unmade. He tells the court about joining the Aryan Brotherhood in 2009, about the ceremony that wasn't a ceremony, the conversation in a Pelican Bay cell where he accepted the shamrock and everything it represented. He talks about how PENI transformed from an independent gang into AB infrastructure, how the takeover happened gradually, then suddenly, until one day he looked around and realized they weren't making their own decisions anymore. He describes the murders, the drug operations, the identity theft schemes generating hundreds of thousands of dollars. The impossible position he found himself in, trying to live 90% clean while the Brotherhood demanded blood. He talks about Stringfellow, about getting the news of his death, about learning that the AB ordered the hit, about realizing that the organization he'd given his life to had murdered his brother. Defense attorneys cross-examine him. They attack his credibility. They point out his criminal history, the attempted murder conviction, the drug trafficking, the identity theft, the decades of violence. They ask why anyone should believe a career criminal, a gang member, a man who spent more of his adult life in prison than out. One attorney asks about the consequences of his cooperation. Maza doesn't hesitate. His voice is steady, resigned to a fate he accepted the moment he picked up the phone to call federal agents. I will be hunted the rest of my life by your client. He knows what he's done. He knows what it means. In the Aryan Brotherhood, in the prison world, in the criminal underworld that spans California's vast correctional system, he's a dead man walking. But he's given prosecutors what they need: details about the commission, evidence of conspiracy, confirmation of the empire-building strategy, names and dates, and recorded phone calls and a roadmap to understanding how the most sophisticated prison gang in American history actually operates. The trial continues through spring and summer 2024. Yandel and the other defendants face decades in federal prison if convicted. The evidence is overwhelming. Wiretapped phone calls, testimony from multiple cooperating witnesses, financial records tracing money from street-level drug deals to imprisoned AB leadership. But even as the trial proceeds, even as the federal government dismantles this particular conspiracy, everyone involved knows the truth. The Aryan Brotherhood isn't going anywhere. They've survived RICO prosecutions before. They've survived federal crackdowns, state investigations, decades of law enforcement scrutiny. Because the organization isn't built on individual leaders. It's built on a system, a structure, a hierarchy that survives even when specific members get locked away or killed. And on the streets, public enemy number one keeps operating. January 1st, 2024. New Year's Day. While most of America is sleeping off hangovers and making resolutions they won't keep, 300 law enforcement officers from 25 different agencies are preparing for the largest gang raid in Southern California history. FBI, U.S. Marshals, local police departments, county sheriffs, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, Drug Enforcement Administration, California Department of Justice. They've been planning this operation for months. Surveillance, wiretaps, coordinating across jurisdictions, building a target list, securing warrants, 75 locations across Southern California, from Orange County to Los Angeles County to San Bernardino. Addresses connected to public enemy number 1 members, associates, girlfriends, family members. The raids hit simultaneously at dawn. Battering rams smashing through doors, flashbang grenades, tactical teams in body armor shouting commands. The overwhelming force of the state descending on PENI's infrastructure all at once. 57 PENI members arrested, handcuffed, read their rights, loaded into police vehicles as neighbors watch from windows and film on cell phones. The raids turn up weapons: 2 handguns, a shotgun, a rifle, small amounts of methamphetamine and heroin, stolen credit cards, false identification documents, parole violations, the usual evidence of gang activity. But the reason for the operation is more serious than drugs or weapons. December 2023. Law enforcement discovered a PENI hit list, names of targets marked for assassination. An Orange County prosecutor who'd been aggressive in pursuing gang cases. 5 police officers who testified against PENI members in court. The raids are preventative. Stop the hits before they happen. Disrupt the organization before they can carry out executions. It's the largest PENI takedown in years. 57 arrests in a single day. A coordinated strike designed to decapitate the leadership, to show the community that law enforcement is taking gang violence seriously, to send a message that no one is untouchable. Within weeks, the gang starts rebuilding. New members step up. Younger guys who weren't around for the Long Beach punk scene, who never met Stringfellow or heard Mazza sing in his hardcore band. They only know one thing: PENI answers to the brand. The infrastructure remains. The identity theft operations continue, adapted now for the digital age. Phishing scams, cryptocurrency fraud, social media hacking. The drug distribution networks keep flowing methamphetamine through Southern California. The violence continues. Because the system hasn't changed. The Aryan Brotherhood still controls white inmates in California prisons. They still need foot soldiers on the streets. They still use PENI as infrastructure, as a farm system, as a pipeline of criminal soldiers serving AB interests. And PENI members keep going to prison. The cycle continues. Young men committing crimes, getting sentenced, entering California's vast correctional system. Once inside, they encounter the hierarchies, the power structures, the racial politics that govern prison life. They learn that white inmates have rules, that there's an organization that protects whites behind bars, that if you want to survive, if you want respect, if you want protection from the other racial groups, you align with the Aryan Brotherhood. And the AB keeps recruiting, keeps absorbing, keeps expanding its empire through proxy organizations that do the dirty work, while leadership remains insulated in segregated housing units. The takeover that began in the early 2000s is complete now. PENI isn't just aligned with the Aryan Brotherhood. They're owned by them. Property. Assets to be used and discarded according to the Brotherhood's strategic interests. Former gang investigator Matthew Boner, the same investigator who explained Stringfellow's murder, understands this better than most. He spent decades studying California's prison gangs, watching the evolution of white supremacist organizations, documenting the violence and the structure, and the endless adaptability. The Aryan Brotherhood doesn't compete with white gangs. He explains in interviews with journalists and researchers. It absorbs them. It's a strategy that's proven devastatingly effective. The Nazi lowriders. Public enemy number one. Smaller Peckerwood gangs across the state. All of them operating under AB direction. All of them funneling resources and intelligence and violence up the chain to imprisoned leadership. The underdog from Long Beach is gone. What remains is a criminal organization serving a prison empire, bound by violence and blood, and the impossible mathematics of survival in California's correctional system. The story of public enemy number one is a story of transformation, of how a group of punk rock kids looking for belonging became foot soldiers in a white supremacist prison gang's empire-building campaign. It's a story about power, about how organizations that seem independent, that have their own history and identity and culture, can be absorbed by larger structures through a combination of violence, incentives, and strategic necessity. It's a story about the prison industrial complex, about how California's approach to incarceration, building massive correctional facilities, warehousing inmates in overcrowded conditions, organizing prisoners along racial lines, creates the perfect environment for prison gangs to flourish. And it's a story about choices, about Develin Stringfellow, who couldn't stay quiet and paid for it with his life, about Donald Mazza, who tried to play both sides and ended up losing everything, about the thousands of young men who joined PENI looking for brotherhood and found themselves trapped in a system that offers only two exits: prison or death. The Aryan Brotherhood continues to operate in California's prisons. Despite decades of RICO prosecutions, despite federal investigations, despite the isolation of the security housing unit, they maintain control over white inmates through proxy organizations and strategic violence. Public enemy number one continues to operate on California's streets. Despite mass arrests, despite federal indictments, despite the cooperation of founding members, new recruits step up to replace those who get locked up or killed. The cycle continues because the system that creates it remains unchanged. As long as California has gang culture, has racial tensions, has prisons that organize inmates by race, and gangs that offer protection and identity to young men with nowhere else to belong, organizations like PENI and the Aryan Brotherhood will continue to exist. The takeover is complete. The underdog became the servant. And the empire keeps expanding, built on violence, on blood, on the endless supply of young men willing to trade their freedom for belonging. This has been American Gang War, the story of how a punk rock gang from Long Beach became slaves to the Aryan Brotherhood, how independence became bondage, how brotherhood became a death sentence. The names change, the faces change, but the violence remains, and the empire keeps growing, one body at a time. This episode contains descriptions of violence and criminal activity. All information is based on court documents, law enforcement reports, and journalistic sources. For more stories about America's most dangerous gangs, subscribe to American Gang War.